President Joe Biden is coming to Madison in just a few short hours here.
It's the president's third time visiting our state just this year ahead of the 2024 presidential election.
So let's check in with WMTV's Brooklyn Andrews. She's joining us now live from Madison College on this beautiful Monday. Good morning, Brooklyn.
Good morning, Tim and Gabriella. Yes, this is where the host site will be for President Joe Biden to come and speak later today around 1:15. He's expected to land around noon, and then he'll be here at Madison College. Madison College did put out a statement yesterday saying that no classes should be affected by the president's visit, nor should there be any major disruptions. There is some detoured routes for buses and transportation, things like that. So just keep that in mind as you travel today. You might want to, if you're out towards this part of town, you might want to give yourself a little extra time. But like you mentioned, this is the president's third time in the state this year, and former President Donald Trump visited just last week in Green Bay. This is definitely a battleground state in the race to the White House. So we'll be detailing more of what the president plans to talk about later today. But for now, I'll send it back to you in the studio in Madison. Brooklyn Andrews, WMTV 15 News.
Brooklyn, thank you for that. Should be a busy day here in Madison with the eclipse happening as well.
And the president's expected to announce some more student debt relief. An announcement like this could have significant political implications. A poll from Protect Borrowers Action shows that overall voters do prefer government action to cancel student debt, or at least offer loan payment relief. About 50% of those polled want to cancel student debt entirely. About 22% want the government to do nothing at all.